So first of all, impressive start by everyone. Very happy to see that. I hope you are feeling the momentum build up, getting the hang of things, finding it easier, you know, having less self-doubt, more confidence in what you're doing. Everyone will have doubts right off the bat, right? So like I've mentioned multiple times before, this is similar to learning any new skill, learning to drive, learning to ride, learning to play a musical instrument. So you just have to give yourself some time with it and you'll see the results. So fantastic. Keep going. And it's perfectly okay if you hit roadblocks. Okay. So it's natural that you'll hit roadblocks. That's why in this format, we have one-on-one guidance every day, which is a reminder for all of you to send in your forms at the end of the day. That's what I'm here for, to be able to support you on this journey. Okay. Tomorrow morning, we'll have the meditation session. I think most of you are joining in the morning. Tomorrow, we will actually not announce the end of the meditation because I think a lot of you will be able to sit longer than 30 minutes. So remember to have an alarm on your phone if you have some other engagement right after that. Okay, and of course, feel free to ask questions through the day. So whatever questions seem to be relevant for the larger group, I'm just sharing some videos on them. Remember, it's perfectly all right to have lots of things come up in your sitting, right? So our job is not to clear our mind. Our job is, so this is something that came up. Our job is not to focus our mind, right? So that is not the primary task. What do we need to do? We need to send that wish to ourselves and then to our friend. And every time our mind wanders away, we use the 6 hours to bring it back, right? So collectedness or stability of mind, being able to stay with the object, that is going to happen naturally as an outcome of training these attentional skills. So it's not so much about forcing your mind to be in a place, but it's about allowing it to be alert about whatever is drawing the attention away, allowing it a easy way to come back without fighting with whatever else may distract you, right? Great. We will have another live talk on Wednesday. It's a very good one. Do plan to attend that, 8 to 9. And in fact, I would recommend that you plan a sitting right after that talk. So I'll be reading a sutta. I'll be basically, I'll tell you more about it, but I'll be basically reading something that records how the Buddha taught his students, right? So it'll be quite powerful. Great. So just from the introduction section, just one other thing is a reminder that if you've not done so already, just plan out the different times in your day that you can do active meditation. It's going to have a dramatic effect on your practice as well, right? So all of you have already been doing walking meditation. So in addition to that, staying with the object whenever you get the opportunity, even if you've not planned it ahead of time, right? So you're doing something and you realize that it's not very mentally taxing, right? And you start sending that wish to your friend, right? Other than that, you can schedule certain times where you know you're going to be not doing anything very challenging, right? Traveling or doing some household chores, right? So at that time also plan to do the active meditation. What is active meditation? Simply you're sending that wish to your friend or to whoever is around you, right? And every time your mind wanders away from that, you're using the 6 hours to bring it gently back. Okay, great. So let me introduce what we're going to talk about today. So I've been talking a lot about tension and tightness in your mind. A lot of you have started to get familiar with it, which is outstanding. I've been talking about the relaxed step. Out of the 6 hours, I've been mentioning that step multiple times, and I've been using a word craving from time to time, right? And all understand this word in very different ways, right? So, craving is what we're going to talk about today, rather than a very large sense of, okay, I desire this or desire that. We are going to talk about it as a very specific mental mechanism, okay? And to do that, we will reuse the example from yesterday, right? So yesterday we started talking about the sense basis and sensation that comes up when something happens at one of the sense stores, right? So we'll use that example. Again, what are we trying to do? We remember that the idea is to understand how our attention moves from one thing to another very well, right? These attentional movements, attentional objects, and attentional movements, they are the building blocks of our experience of life. So, unless we are able to understand and change the way these pan out, we can't fundamentally change our experience of life, right? So, that is the underlying motivation for this. So, I'll use some visual aids. In fact, we will build upon the same slide that we had yesterday. There will be more mechanisms that we'll cover in the next couple of days so that you become very familiar with what's happening between one attentional object to the next attentional object, and you understand that unit of life experience very, very clearly. Okay, then let me share my screen. I just want to remind everyone to smile while I do that. Just one second. By the time this goes into slideshow mode, I think the spoilers are already in place. But thankfully, this is not a subject that everybody is familiar with. So I think that should not be a problem. Okay, great. Building block of experience, attentional object 1 to attentional object 2. This is what is repeating all the time, and this is what is constituting our experience of life. Whatever is outside of this does not exist in our experience, right? Great. So where does this start? Where does this movement from one attentional object to another start? Something has to happen, right? So like in the concept of inertia in Newton's laws of motion, right? A ball will keep traveling at the same uh, velocity infinitely if it is in a frictionless vacuum, unless there is something else acting upon it. Something changes, right? So where does this change happen? This change happens at one of our sense stores, one of the channels through which we receive information about reality. And these sense stores are the eye, ear, nose, body, tongue, and our mind, right? So something has to happen at one of these stores. We took the example of somebody who's walking. Attentional object 1 for them is they're walking thinking about a presentation that they have to make at work the next day, right? And they suddenly walked past a bakery. They had the smell of a freshly baked pie or cake come towards them, and started thinking about whether they want it or not, right? So that was the premise, attentional object 1 to attentional object 2. So what's happening here? You have the nose, you have the smell that is coming from the bakery, and you have the ability to process this information. So these three things have to come together for that event to happen that will start your journey ahead, right? When this happens, this is known as contact, right? The coming together of your sense space, information, and your ability to process that information. As soon as this happens, there is a sensation, right? A sensation is either painful or pleasant or neutral. There is an entire spectrum, right? So depending on, and this depends a lot on your conditioning, right? So it depends on whether you like baked goods or not, right? Whether you like baked goods from that particular place or not, right? Whether you're a human or some other species. If you're a beetle, for example, you might be interested in the beer bottle that's lying outside, right? So this gives a very positive sensation to you. But still, you have lots of sensation, lot of contact happening at all points of time, right? I'm sitting here, I have contact with the floor, I have visual contact with the laptop, with the lights around me, I have some air that is touching me, right, on my body. There is some kind of aroma around me, nothing, very neutral kind of aroma, right? So each of these has a sensation. The neutral aroma has a very kind of neutral sensation. I hate these lights which are like shining into my eyes continuously, but you can't see me clearly enough. But I have to live with it. It's a painful sensation, right? I also don't like bending over close to the mic, but the quality on the other wireless mic wasn't that great. So okay, so that's another sensation that's happening, right? So different sensations are happening now. How do you decide where to place the attention, right? So for example, it's very possible the person was so absorbed about their presentation they just walked past, right? So what happened that drew their attention to that particular sensation? So why did they not look at the display of the, maybe apparel shop that was down the road, right? Why did they not look at a dog that was on the pavement, right? So why did they not look at this thing? Why did uh, they particularly pay attention to the pie, right? So the next mechanism that happens in our experience while we are going from attentional object to attentional B is something called craving. So this is what I've been talking about continuously. And craving essentially grips your attention with a particular object. And this has to do with how you have engaged with it in the past, what you have thought about it. And craving has distinct flavors of wanting something, not wanting something. So we'll unpack that a little bit more. So I just want to go through the flows, right? So you have underlying information processing ability, you have underlying conditioning, you have sense basis. Okay. All these are in place already. At this particular moment, a contact happened. The smell of the pie hit your nose. There was this pleasant sensation, and you had a craving. Craving means I want it, right? So it can also be I don't want it. There could have been a very foul odor, and you immediately had to close your nose, right? So that could have been another type of craving that came up. So craving basically says I want it, I don't want it. For the first time in this entire process, craving makes it about you. So when the contact happened, it was not about you. There was a smell, right? There was a sensation, right? So there are a lot of sensations happening around me, but I don't necessarily care about them. I don't necessarily place my attention on them. Craving starts to put the I into the situation and starts to make things personal. So let's look a little bit more into craving. Okay. So this is the beginning of I coming into the picture. There are things that happen, and there are things that happen to you. There are things that happen from you. There are things that happen about you, right? And all of these have this flavor. So this is again related to the pleasure pain guidance system that we talked about. We don't always think through things objectively. We use our uh, the sensations of pleasure and pain, and that converts into a personalization of I like it or I dislike it, right? So I like the smell of pie. Somebody honked at me on the road, and we don't think of it as just a event on the road. We say I don't like it, right? Somebody in our house is clumsy and they break a piece of glass. It's your mind doesn't register, hey, this happened, this glass is broken, and maybe the next step is to just clean it up. The first thing that might happen is I don't like it. Your mind, when you're sitting in the meditation, may wander off to a distraction, and immediately you are I don't like it. I don't like why my mind has gone away, or I don't like why it is taking so long. Why aren't 30 minutes up or 45 minutes up, depending on how long you're sitting? So craving starts to make this about you. So some foolish person's made a political statement, but now you are all riled up because it's now about you. It's about whether you like it or whether you don't like it, right? So contacts are happening, they are impersonal in nature. Sensations are happening, they are impersonal in nature. They are very related to you because every person will have different sensations according to the situation. But craving is the first point where it becomes about I like it, I dislike it, I want it, I don't want it, I wish for this, I fear this might happen, right? So what you're doing is you're looking at reality and you're saying, okay, I want more of this. right? This is also kind of related to the way you go after food, or so our underlying mechanisms of chasing after different things or running away from different things, going away from danger, it's related to craving, right? It makes it about you, and it's much easier to make it about you because then you jump into action, right? So you don't wait to consider things, you just jump into action. This is the very beginning in this entire movement from attentional object A1 to attentional object 2. Beginning of taking things personally. I like it, I don't like it. I like the smell of pie, right? I want pie, right? It's no longer about this. I've crossed a bakery and the smell of baked goods coming up. What I actually need to do is maybe focus on that presentation, or maybe I don't even need to do that. Maybe I need to focus on walking without tripping, right? So uh, it could be anything else that is actually suitable for the moment, but now it's about I like that cake, and now the agenda for the next few moments is going to be about what I want or I don't want. Craving reflects a degree of attachment, so things that you have more attachment to, you will have more craving to. If you have a sweet tooth, you're going to have a lot of craving for the pie, right? If you don't have a sweet tooth, maybe not that much craving. If you're very sensitive to maybe jokes that are a little offensive, you will immediately dislike what has been said. You may not, it might be possible for you to simply think that, okay, this person is clearly not sensitive enough or considerate enough, but instead of thinking that, it will be about you. I dislike this, I don't like why this is happening in the world. And this craving, this mechanism, so till the sensation happening, this doesn't become so prominent, but as soon as craving kicks in, right, attaches you to that situation, makes it personal for you, makes it about you, not about simply about what's happening in the world, there is this gripping sensation in your mind, right? This is what we try to want to diffuse with the 6 hours, because this essentially makes it all about I. And when it is about I, it is very difficult to ignore something happened that you don't care about. Okay, so some IPO happened that you don't care about, you don't think about it too much, or some sport that you absolutely don't understand, somebody won some league, you don't care about it, right? So some residential plots came up for sale, you're not looking to buy a house, you don't care about it, so you don't have any tightness in your mind and body related to that. So your degree of attachment shows that, increases the amount of tightness that you have. And when we use the 6 hours, when we use the relaxed step, right, we are teaching our mind new habits. The mind has become habituated to take this thing personally. The mind has become habituated to be attached to this particular thought process. The mind has become habituated to, generate this tightness as soon as this event happens. Every time we use the 6 hours, we are teaching a new habit to the mind. We are saying that, hey, it's not about whether I like it or I dislike it. Is there something for me to do? Is there some action? Is there something for me to learn? Is there something for me to do? That is the only thing that is really contributing to a better future for you. Maybe something happened in the past. Can I learn something, not repeat that mistake? Maybe something is happening right now. Can I do something to make a positive impact in that situation? That's all, right? So somebody comes and honks behind you. There is literally nothing you can do positive in that situation, unless maybe it's your neighbor and you can have a pleasant educational conversation with them, and I don't mean that sarcastically, right? So maybe you can have that conversation and say, hey, this is actually inconsiderate, and I hope you have considered that, depending on your relation with that person, obviously. But if you can't do anything about it, letting go of that tightness is actually letting go of that attachment. Letting go of taking that thing personally is actually the smartest strategy. You're not learning anything there, you're not able to make any positive change to your life or anybody else's life. Still, our mind spends a lot of time in this, looking at things that are said in the political arena, looking at news outside of even the political arena that is triggering, right? And this is exactly what big tech thrives on, for instance, right? I don't have any personal agenda against big tech, but I think it is important for us to know, because it is pretty much taking over our lives. They are driven by their own cravings to actually build these kind of systems. But these systems actually find out what you take the most personally, what you have the most attachment to, what is creating that craving in you, and they keep feeding you things like that, right? So your attention is gripped, your movement of attention from one thing to another stays gripped. And anybody who's spent an hour of their life scrolling through their phone and having learned a lot of interesting facts that have absolutely nothing positive to contribute to their lives, and that is each one of us. All of us have done this, right? And this is the mechanism. This craving mechanism keeps you hooked to that, because every time that happens, it's about I, right? So I like this, I like what this person said, I dislike what this person said, I like getting new facts about this sport, something like that, right? So it's about the like and dislike. When it becomes about you, when it becomes personal, it is very difficult to let something go. It's very difficult to maintain an objective view on things. And this craving becomes the foundation for compulsive behavior. In fact, this is such a powerful mechanism that the Buddha was asked, has been asked like by many students, you know, different metaphysical questions, things about the universe, things about the cosmos, things about rebirth, reincarnation, all these things. And the Buddha said, hey, you know, I teach only one thing, and that is the end of suffering or dissatisfaction, right? And he traces craving as the root of this. So we'll go through the Four Noble Truths. So the crux of the Buddha's teaching, the possibly the smallest, the most concise, uh, you know, presentation of the Buddha's teaching is known as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth is the truth of dukkha. So dukkha is dissatisfaction, and it doesn't. So a lot of people mistranslate that as life is suffering, right? So the truth of dukkha is that there is dissatisfaction in life. Each one of us is can be a witness to this, can give testimony to this. There is dissatisfaction that crops up many times, and there is a lot of dissatisfaction which is extremely avoidable, right? So you uh, that for a fact, not just the things that maybe you got hurt in an accident while you were following all the rules, driving most carefully, right? So maybe that was unavoidable for you, but there is a lot of dissatisfaction in life which is unavoidable, which is avoidable for us. The second noble truth is the origin of dissatisfaction or samudaya. And this the Buddha says the origin or the foundation or the root of dissatisfaction is craving. So he's talking about this. He's talking about that tension and tightness that grips your mind in a situation and makes it about you, makes it personal, right? You want the world to be a certain way. If it's not that way, you're going to be upset. You don't want some things in your life. If they come into your life, you're going to be upset, right? Maybe you have some action to do it, but instead of doing that action, you will be upset. Maybe you don't have any action to do. Maybe you have no learning to do, in which case all you can do is actually just let it be, but you will still get upset, and that is driven by craving. And there is a end to craving, nirodha. That is the third noble truth. So the Buddha is extremely analytical teacher. He teaches using feelings as well, right? So which we are using, which are anything but analytical, but in his presentations he had a very root cause analysis kind of way of telling things. So there is dissatisfaction, there is a cause for dissatisfaction, and the if you end the cause, then the dependent phenomenon ceases to be. So the end of craving leads to the end of dissatisfaction. There is dissatisfaction, it is rooted in craving. If you can get rid of craving, you can get rid of dissatisfaction. And finally, he says there is a method, there is a structured system and method to get to this point, get to the end of craving, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. We are already applying a lot of these things in the retreat. We have not learned it in this structure. It will come later. But the 6 hours, I'll tell you, is a fundamental part of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is one of the folds of the eightfold path that we're using, right? So this craving is the foundation of dissatisfaction, because at any point of time, if you are completely gripped with a personal agenda in the world, that I will be happy only if this happens. I want this and I'll only be happy if I get this. I dislike this and I will be only happy if this goes away. If that becomes your condition, then you need the rest of the world, all of physics to cooperate, all of chemistry to cooperate to make that thing happen every moment of your existence. That is not going to happen. And when things don't happen your way, if you continue to be stuck in that craving, when you have no action, maybe no learning to take away from that moment, if you continue to be personally stuck because of that craving, you are going to have continuous dissatisfaction in your life. Not maybe not continuous, but many, many, many moments of dissatisfaction, avoidable dissatisfaction in your life. So that is what we are learning. Everything. So I've not mentioned the Buddha many times. I have mentioned him a few times. We do it every day in the morning as well. But I've not been using the necessarily all the Buddhist texts and terminologies to look at things. But this is essentially, we are learning the core of the Buddha's teaching. And I'll use a very simple prop. It's like used multiple times in, to explain this idea of craving this or something else, right? So similar kind of thought. So but I find that the visual is like very good, right? So let's just take this jar, and it's got an orange inside. So let's say I want this. Okay, it could be I don't want it, but let's say I want it. Okay, so I'm sitting in my meditation, or I'm doing something, right? The fellow's work, thinking, has to make a very important presentation the next day, right? And my attention suddenly goes to this orange, right? So I really, really want this orange. So I have a very pleasant sensation come up, and the pleasant, as soon as that sensation comes, so the contact happens. I look at the orange, that is, the visual information comes, my sense space and the ability to process that information, they come together. There is contact. If this was behind me, I would not register it because it's not very strong smelling. Maybe if I had a sharper nose, I would have contact at the nose sense space, and this would happen. The sensation is pleasant because I love this Mandarin, right? And immediately my mind goes from whatever I'm doing and says, I want that, right? So craving becomes the basis. There is a tightening that is happening already. And let's think of this as our attention, right? And we've got this grip. I want this. Okay. So there is a tight grip. There is that tension and tightness. Our attention is completely gripped around this, right? And now I can't get out of this jar, right? So I managed to slide in, but I can't get out of this. Now, instead of a Mandarin, think of this as something, one of your pet peeves, right? We talked about rabbit holes. Maybe something somebody says doesn't sit well with you. Maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a family member, and they say something and it just upsets you, right? You don't like it. Your mind is gripped around it. As long as your mind is gripped around it, you can't get it out. You don't have any other, I mean, as long as your mind is gripped around it, you're not able to get it out. All you can do is you can let it be, right? This is an example of a situation where you have no option but to let it be. But as long as you have craving, you're going to be stuck there. As long as you're gripped around it, you're going to be stuck there. You're not going to be able to get out of it. That's how rabbit holes work. They have craving that we are not able to let go, and primarily because we are not trained to let go of it. And 6 hours is the way. So letting it be, 6 hours is a structured way. Sometimes we let things be over time because the sensation, because we learn other things in life, the sensations associated with something change, right? So a lot of us, when we go from school to college, we hear a very different coarseness of language, right? And initially it may be very upsetting. Over time you realize that, okay, people don't maybe mean harm, it's just they have those habits, right? So sensations can change over time, and we do get over things in time. But till then, we are spending millions of cycles of our attention being in a place dissatisfied. I don't like it. I don't like it. Something that was said to you 10 years back, right? And you are stuck with it. I don't like it. It keeps coming up in your mind. When it does, because the craving is strong, you're stuck there. You're not able to get out. You have no solution. You have no learning, really. You have whatever learning was that you've squeezed it out many, many, many years back, right? You have no learning from it, but you're stuck with that because of that craving. How do you get out? You use the 6 R's. You recognize that your attention is caught with something on the basis of craving. You let that be. You understand that right now I have nothing to learn, nothing to do about this. Release it. You relax the tension and tightness that is binding your attention in a personal way to that thought or that object. Smile, and smiling also reduces. It's difficult to smile and have that tension and tightness in your mind. That is why it's literally a hack. And in fact, that I'll share some good scientific articles, right? Two very interesting themes. One is like what happens biochemically when we smile, and the other thing, it's a very interesting thing, right? So some people say that I won't smile because I don't feel like it, but it turns out there is no difference in the happiness when you that you feel naturally versus the happiness that you feel once you smile for a little while. There is no fundamental difference in it, right? So yeah, so you bring the smile and you come back to a wholesome place, something that you're interested in doing, something that is good for you, something that is constructive for your life. And every time you do this, every time you let it be, you teach your mind that I don't need to be bound through craving with this thing. I don't need to take it personally. Just because somebody honked behind me, I don't need to make it about me. It could very well be a person who's like rushing for an emergency, right? But we don't know that. It happened. There is nothing to learn for us, nothing to do, no action to take. But we can still spend like many, many thousands of cycles of our mental bandwidth just being upset about it because I don't like it. And if I don't like it, there's nothing more important in the world, right? So craving traps you in that little, makes you small, it makes you trapped in that friction with the world that I don't like what the world is like right now, right? I want something to change. I want something to come to me. I want something to go away from me. It's a state of dissatisfaction. Great. So, this is a very, very powerful and important understanding. This is so important that the Buddha chose to include it in the most concise presentation of his entire teaching, right? Craving is the fundamental foundation of dissatisfaction. And what we are learning right now, what we are practicing is multiple tools from the Eightfold Paths. But out of that, we have one extremely strong tool, which is the 6 R's, right? Relaxing that tension and tightness, getting to identify it. So a lot of you have become better and better at identifying it. I have shared a few examples in the prep kit, right? So it is the tightness that comes in your mind, when you have to hold your bathroom requirements for a long time, or you're trying to get somebody's attention, or you're maybe trying to catch a flight or a train and you're getting late, or somebody's delaying you, right? So somebody's not getting ready in time and you're feeling that tightness, right? That desperation. So craving basically keeps you dissatisfied because it doesn't like something or it likes something, right? I mean, I'm personifying it, but unless that changes, it keeps you dissatisfied continuously. Okay. And it makes it about you. It doesn't help you necessarily learn about something about the situation. Great. So I'll pause with that. I think that is a very important thing for us to digest. In terms of what I would like you to do as an exercise for tomorrow, uh, I'll after I share this, I'll also ask you to share if anyone managed to do the exercise today. So what I'd like you to do tomorrow is try to see the things that annoy you, or that, so it could be something that you want very much or you don't want, right? So maybe you're looking to buy something and you're looking for an offer and that really really excites you, right? Or if all else fails, just spend 15 minutes on the phone and you'll get a lot of craving that you can experience, right? So try to be more sensitive to the tension and tightness, both in your practice as well as what's happening in daily life. If you'd like, you can repeat the exercise that we did tomorrow again, the mindful eating exercise, and you see how there is tightness generating maybe when you see the most favorite item, and your mind becomes, hey, I want it, I want it, not I want it, right? So there's nothing more important in the world, get to it already, right? Stuff it in, right? So you'll feel that tightness happen. It may not be you may not be sensitive enough right now to see that very closely. Definitely things that you dislike, things like if you open your phone, you'll find things that are provoking always, right? You can notice it then, see it around colleagues or friends. Monday morning something or the other is going to go wrong. If you're traveling for your work, you're likely to get stuck somewhere, right? Unless you're in Goa, of course. And those things are likely to happen. Try to see somebody honks behind you, see how your mind tightens around it, see how your mind says, I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it. It's essentially registering a complaint with reality, and that's a battle we are never going to win. What we need to do is see if we can learn something or do something, and we do that best when our mind is not gripped in that personal situation, I like it, I don't like it. When we use the 6 hours, bring our mind to a wholesome state and see what can I learn or what can I do about it. Great. I'll take a break. So now, question and answers. Any questions from your practice about the concepts that we've been talking about, discussing, or any experiences from your exercises that you have done? If you want to share or discuss a rabbit hole and how these principles apply to that, right? So it's open season. So, and I really encourage you to ask, because every question someone asks is an opportunity for everybody else to learn, including me, right? So because your challenges are very personal, but as humans, our minds work very similarly, right? That is what we are understanding, the similar parts of every human's mental mechanisms. So something that you see from a certain perspective may be helpful for the rest to learn. So feel free to share something from your experience, ask questions.